This one, our friends, is a double-barreled
22mag.
Yeah.
revolver.
This thing is a engineering feat, and it's funky looking.
It is funky
So
looking.
I'm gonna hold it up to the camera.
Yeah, I'd say it's more feet than engineering.
That's pretty good. That's a good joke.
Thanks, guys.
Like the two left feet of guns. So
It's unique.
this thing is weird. It's weird. It's
Very.
cool, but it's very weird. So, forgive me. I don't really like that perspective right there, but I'm trying to show you this whole gun. And when I say there, if you join the live stream, you can see this visually, and we'll do our best for the radio audience and the podcast listener to describe this thing. But if I make accidentally references to what I'm showing, that's because we do have a live video stream going on Facebook. And again, I don't mean to point this gun at you in the context of the video, but I want to remind you that there's no one there. That is
Just a camera.
just a $60 Logitech webcam,
C920s to be exact.
in case you want to crack the code and how to make how to make your
That's all
own.
it
All you got to do, get
TV
4
show.
cameras,
Just 4
a
cameras.
mixer, a
Three-
Trevor,
3 goobers, some webcams, lots of USB ports,
Lots of cable.
a bunch of mistakes,
Lots of cable.
several complaints from people on the internet. Boom, you got your own show.
So simple, man. You just gave away all the recipe. We're going to have to close the
Wow.
doors now.
There
I
was
know
never
anybody
a
could
show
do
now,
this.
yeah.
Anybody could do this.
If we can do it,
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this.
Let's talk about it.
The holes in the cylinder.
Yes.
It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And looking at that, that looks like a standard revolver cylinder. Am I right?
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
The difference, though, the obvious difference. So what we have in our hands is a revolver.
yes.
Okay. It's got 8 holes in the cylinder. So
Yes.
right now I have the cylinder swung out. It's all black, but the shape is quite different.
It's unique.
So, you've got your pistol grip here on this revolver. The back is hammerless. Got a probably what feels like aluminum housing, but this thing has 2 barrels.
2 barrels.
That is the probably most distinct feature.
It's
Well-
a double-barreled revolver.
Logan pointed out to me that it's not just 2 barrels, but didn't you say 2 triggers too?
No.
Oh, he mentioned 2
Yeah.
triggers.
Well, it has.
It functions as 2 triggers.
But you have to use 2 fingers.
You have to use. I don't think you can cycle it only using 1 finger.
No, so it has this trigger safety. So I'm gonna hold this up closely to the camera there, put it against my creamy tones there.
bouncing off the tones.
So if you, and again, this isn't actually pointed at anyone right now, but I'm going to show you this trigger. You cannot activate this trigger unless you depress the trigger safety. So to further describe this for the radio listener, the standard manufacturing Thunderstruck has a trigger that protrudes from the bottom that is like one trigger, like picture a typical trigger, and then imagine right where it would end and be the end of the trigger, it like starts a new trigger off the bottom of it, and then in the upper portion, in the first trigger, there is a trigger safety. And then rather than having a trigger guard that comes down and around the whole trigger, there is just a, I would say, trigger
Guard?
I mean, it's no, it's not a trigger guard in the traditional sense.
No, it's not.
But it
It's,
still kind of is guarding the trigger. So it's just this fang, this looking tooth thing, where the trigger guard would come down and wrap around. So what's interesting is Trevor's inclination is to say this guards the trigger, but I think you would have a lot of gun owners that would say this thing has no trigger guard.
Yeah.
Because in the traditional sense, it does not.
It wraps around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically like a trigger guard that fell asleep on the job.
Yeah, it's a trigger more like deterrent, not a full-blown guard. Yeah, more like a trigger mall cop.
Oh,
This thing is
What do you
22
mean,
mag.
video?
And it shoots, we mentioned his double barrel, it shoots both rounds at the same time.
simultaneously.
Yeah, you have 8 rounds on the cylinder, but that's only 4 shots because it's firing 2 shots at once.
Yeah. And also,
I like that delivery style.
while this one shoots 2 or has 2 barrels and shoots 2 rounds, the Behrman Derringer 1 at a time.
Correct.
that we're giving away. for
Good
sure.
distinction.
Correct.
Good distinction.
Accurate.
Let's watch this video.
This is Logan Jones reporting for the Gun Shop Show. We're shooting the Sanier Manufacturing's Thunderstruck and 22mag.
Windy.
Yeah. Believe it or not, he's hitting his own.
Is he really?
It's going to take some getting used to.
Brutal honesty.
That ain't no joke.
So that thing was weird to shoot.
Yeah, it
Right?
was super
Extremely
weird.
weird. The more I think about it, the more I'm inclined to think it's supposed to be shot one-handed.
Should we take this out behind the barn and bonk it on the head?
I think we need to.
Let's watch Eli shoot this guy.
Yeah, let me. I don't
Eli
remember.
Bruton for the Gun Shop Show. Shooting a weird little gun. Standard Manufacturing Thunderstruck. 2 shots at once.
I struggle with the trigger on this thing. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I did too.
It was awkward.
That's a heavy pull.
It was a heavy pull. There you go. Got one off.
That was a good first shot.
It all fell apart after that.
Remember that first shot?
And then
Pew.
I'm used
Last
to
one. There you
counting like 6
Hard to keep
shots in
track
a
when you're
revolver.
shooting 2 at once.
Yeah, there we go.
That's really different.
So,
It is different.
here, you guys go first, and then I'll give my pros and cons.
Well, I have one more video to play.
Yeah.
This
And
one's
we're,
this is
and we're kind of towards the end of the.
yeah. This one's a
segment
nail.
anyway.
This one's a nail biter, folks.
Okay.
This is Trevor Smith reporting for the Gun Shop Show with the something Thunderstruck. There we go.
Oh, there it is.
There's a train coming.
I can't really tell that you're shooting 2 rounds at the same time.
Well, I can.
Yes, you can.
I certainly couldn't.
2 in the ding.
I forgot you said.
All right.
We're talking about the Thunderstruck, y'all.
Anyway, yeah.
So we're round tabling.
Okay.
Logan went first last time.
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, so what I thought about the Thunderstruck was ultimately it's not for me. I like the novelty of it. I think it's neat that you can shoot 2 bullets at one time, but I don't want to put 2 rounds in just to have 1 shot. Like if I'm going to put 12 rounds in the gun, I want 12 shots, not 6 shots, So overall, I'd have to say that's the downside. The upside is it's pretty cool. I mean, that's about it, y'all.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I like that somebody tried something different.
Yeah, me too.
Guns have been the same for a really long time. Like,
Yeah.
Hundreds of years, actually.
basically, not much has changed in at least 100 years in the basic design of guns. Now, people are going to say, you're going to compare a Hellcat to a gun 100 years ago. Yes, improvements in capacity.
Yeah.
But as far as the basics of what
functionality.
what goes
Pretty
on,
much the same.
Yeah, so this is outside the box. Now, I've got to say a couple things. I mentioned that I could tell I was shooting 2 rounds only for the recoil of comparing a normal 22 mag revolver with 2 rounds of 22 mag. It definitely felt more like a 38 special or
It did.
something
It did.
in par with that, or shooting some of the 9mm revolvers that I've shot in the past. So
Do you think that the effectiveness of those rounds, I mean, it's got to be additive, right? It couldn't just be that, like, you hit the target with another one of those and it was like 50% more. It's at least got to be 100% more effective, right?
yeah, I would say total energy. And then what's interesting, and I don't know that anybody's really studied this in depth, so you can determine the total muzzle energy or the impact energy of a round by the mass times velocity, and you're doubling the mass in this case, the same velocity. But what's interesting is I don't know what the 2 different points of impact are. So if these 2 things are touching, at minimum you have a wound channel that's doubled because you have twice as wide of a bullet
Right.
impact.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is if you just say 22 Magnum, which by the way, 22 Magnum is more potent than people realize, especially out of a longer barrel. Now, this is a very short barrel, so you're not getting some of that velocity that you would get when you shoot, for example, a PMR 30 with a 4-inch barrel. You're getting pretty good wound channels. But what's interesting is when you hit a target, and you can use ballistics gel if you don't want to imagine tissue being shot, you get impact, and then you get a widening canyon of wound channel. Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this at all. I'm just improvising here.
That's bright.
There we go. So you're getting a small entry hole and a large exit hole. Now, the question is, when you have a point of impact, if it's spread out even a little bit, I would imagine that you're getting a double amount of wound channel from that. So something that would have probably been a good test, and maybe a test for another time, is to see where's the impact
On paper.
On paper, is it pretty much touching every time, or are you getting a little bit of spread? And maybe that might be. For all I know, they could have designed the two chambers to have slightly different rifling to intentionally give you,
Like make one go a little bit faster than the other so one can get behind another? Is that what you mean?
no, more of if by the exact rate of turn, you can get slight variations in point of impact. That's why even some guns will shoot two different brands of ammo different, just because there's a slight variation of how the projectile interacts with the rifling. And if you were to do that intentionally, you might be able to get a minor amount of spread of point of impact. It could remain consistent, but you could have, say, an intentional inch at 7 yards or 21 feet that you want those spread an inch apart. So I have no idea if that's true in this gun, but the theory to me is there, because the wound channel, I would think, would be, you'd be damaging tissue that you wouldn't otherwise damage regardless of the size of the projectile. So we know at minimum you're getting twice as much punch, but you may actually be getting a magnified amount of damage because of that spread, if that makes sense. So, interesting overall, I would say, probably for me, it would be more of, to own it would be just to pull it out to turn heads, to make people be like, are you serious? It's a double barrel. It fires 2 rounds at once.
Right.
It might be also interesting to play around with the notion of the point of impact and how much total damage it would be, to shoot, say a cantaloupe with it and see what sort of exit points you have on both of those points of impact. Overall, though, the shooting experience, not my favorite gun of the ones that we shot. The trigger pull was very heavy. Yeah. And I'm not, and this might be to blame for practice. The idea of having both fingers on the trigger is not a mechanic that I'm used to.
Right.
And made me struggle. It could get better with a little practice. What was your thoughts, Logan?
Real quick while the segment ends. My biggest complaint was the trigger. It was weird to get used to, and if I had my main hand and my support hand in there, when I would try to pull the trigger, my support hand would get in the way and I wouldn't be able to pull the trigger. So that was the biggest issue I had. The recoil, while it was additive, it was more so than a 22 mag. Didn't really bother me. But yeah, my biggest complaint was the trigger. I like the concept of firing 2 barrels at once, but you need to make it more practical and functional before I'll be on board with it. Would I own one? Yeah, but it's going to be more of a novelty.
Yeah. This is fun to shoot on the Gun Shop Show.
Previous episodes and more available at gunshopshow.com.